Today I'll be refuting my opponent's claim about nuclear radiation. Her claim is that nuclear radiation has less risky consequences than the general public makes it out to be. My claim is that nuclear radiation is harmful and has more risky consequences to the general public. Just to refresh your guys' mind, your memory, nuclear radiation is a radiation in the form of elementary particles emitted by an atomic nucleus, as gamma rays produced by decay of radioactive substances. Her first secondary claim is that nuclear deaths are less than 50, where coal and hydrogen are around 20,000 to 30,000 each in the past 50 years. My opponent failed to provide sufficient evidence. However, after looking into further research, I found out that there was an atomic bomb test located in the Granada de Muertos Desert, southeast of Socorro, New Mexico, that produced the explosive power of 20 kilotons of TNT. Basically, what the researchers did, they began a test but did not complete the test, so they basically abandoned it, and during that time, the atomic bomb began to produce hazardously and killed people that were there to film a movie at that time. Her secondary claim is that recently there was a story about the radiation levels of fish being 2,500 times higher than the legal amount allowed in seafood. In her supporting evidence, she states that the fish approximately has 3,300 microsieverts when the legal limit is actually 1.3 microsieverts. She later tries to say it's not a big deal by saying it's not the end of the world. Looking at the numbers, anyone would be able to tell that the fish still contains more than the legal limit, and to say it's not the end of the world is contradicting to my opponent's claim, considering she is technically saying that the fish is not safe for the public to consume. According to an article in Mail Online, radiation levels in most kinds of fish caught off the east coast of Fukushima haven't declined in the year following Japan's nuclear disaster. It has emerged. Researchers believe that deposits of the chemical cesium on the seafloor or leakage from the damaged reactors is continuing to contaminate the waters and has the potential to threaten fisheries for decades. Around 40% of bottom-dwelling fish, such as cod, flounder, and halibut, tested off Japan's northeast coast remain unfit for human consumption. Fox News reports the plant operator insisted that the radiation will rapidly disperse and that it poses no immediate danger, but an expert said exposure to the highly concentrated levels near the Fukushima Daiichi plant could cause immediate injury, and the leaks could result in residual contamination of the sea and the area. This brings me to my next point. If nuclear radiation isn't that bad, then how is it strong enough to reach our country's oceans all the way from Japan? Experts agree that radiation dissipates quickly in the vast Pacific, but direct exposure to the most contaminated water measure would lead to immediate injury, said Yoichi Inokita, a professor of materials science at Nagoya University's Graduate School of Engineering. My opponent's third secondary claim states that new technologies are allowing us to safely dispose of nuclear waste, which is true. However, as far as safety goes, according to an article, the fission is driven by neutrons provided by fusion ignition events and is consequently not self-sustaining. If the fusion process is deliberately shut off or the process is disrupted by a mechanical failure, the fission damps out and stops nearly instantly. Given the following claims, I conclude that nuclear radiation is harmful to the public.
All right, the main points are listed. You've got clear counterclaims that you're going to be labeling. On the first point, you talk about deaths, and I think you have a little bit of an issue here that's problematic because I'm not exactly sure how deaths related to bomb tests have much to do with the nuclear radiation that comes from power plants that seems to be the main focus of the advocate's claim. I'm not, obviously, nuclear radiation from an atomic bomb is dangerous to people. That's why they all die. It's not just the concussion. And I don't think that the advocate meant to imply that people don't die of radiation poisoning or exposure. I think they're mostly talking about in the normal course of events. And you focused primarily, for example, in the second part of the speech on the Fukushima plants and those issues that went on there. So I think that's pretty clear. So the evidence on that first point that you present, I don't really think addresses the issue that's coming up. I thought you had a better argument on the fish contamination, where you talk about, they mentioned the amount of microsieverts that are in the fish, and the advocate's only argument is it's no big deal. It's not, it's not that big a deal. And I think you should say, look, the standard is 1.5, and these fish have 3,200 or 2,000 times as much as they're supposed to have. If the health and safety organizations say it's unsafe to have it above that level, and that's all these fish have, it seems like it's kind of unsafe, and that's the standard that we ought to judge by, not just, it's no big deal. I mean, that seems like a silly response that the advocate made. On the radiation levels in the Japanese fish, I thought that you did a good job talking about that. And there was one good piece of information that said basically 40% of those bottom-feeding fish are now off limits for human consumption. So there's a pretty significant risk from the contamination here, at least to the food sources. Even if it's not directly affecting people, their food sources are affected, and that sounds like it's a negative thing. You kind of I'm not sure what the argument about the radiation getting across the ocean means. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. You raised it, you ask a question, and then we move on. So how it applies to anything, I'm not sure. On the third point, you basically say that, yes, there is an ability to dissipate this and change it, and then you just kind of give a clearer explanation of how it works, I think, than even the advocate provided there. So what you need to do is explain why that's not relevant, because that might be relevant to some types of waste, or that doesn't affect the waste that gets out, for instance, inadvertently. We can do those kinds of things. We can dissipate the waste for spent fuel rods, for instance, but we can't do that for inadvertent releases like at the power plants that had the problem with the tsunami. I think that's maybe the way to phrase that. I thought you did a nice job, again, stating what your claims were and trying to present them and explain your arguments as you went along, but another one of those things where there's just way too much reading. You guys are reading essays out loud, and that's not really helping your credibility much.